I remember the clinking of silverware and the flash of cameras. The hall in Cleveland was crowded. Good music, people laughing, the kind of noise that should drown out any discomfort, but not mine. Right in front, at the central table, there was an empty chair. Her chair. I pretended not to see it. I greeted guests, smiled at relatives I barely knew, and every time someone said, "Your mother must be so proud," it felt like taking a punch. My father was there. Simple suit, tired face, the expression of someone who wished he were somewhere else but tried anyway. He spoke little, stayed close enough to look present, but far enough not to be a comfort. The ceremony had been beautiful. Maya was radiant. She always had that way of seeming steady and calm, even when the world was falling apart. When we stepped onto the makeshift altar, she squeezed my hand and whispered, "Look at me, only at me." I did. And for a few minutes, the empty chair didn't exist. But during dinner, when the lights dimmed and the conversation slowed, I felt my phone vibrating in my jacket pocket. My mother's name flashed on the screen. I didn't answer. Then, another notification. A short, dry message. "I'm at Chase's party. He needed me today. We'll talk later." The waiter appeared with a bottle of sparkling wine, and by reflex, I just shook my head. Maya noticed my distant look and asked, "She called?" I nodded. She didn't say anything, just placed her hand over mine and left it there, firm. Later, when we went to take photos, the photographer insisted that I smile more. "Think of something happy," she said. I tried. I thought of my grandparents' house in Parma. I thought about how, when I was a kid, I used to believe that was the center of the world. But in that hall, I realized I still carried the same trick, trying to think of another place every time someone left me alone. When I was little, my grandmother would wake before sunrise and fill the kitchen with life. Stove hissing, radio playing those old songs from the local Parma station. I used to call that house our house. I didn't know yet that it was only borrowed. The room where I slept had yellow wallpaper. The mattress was a bit worn, but to me it was the most comfortable place on the planet. They never let me go without anything. Sometimes when my parents came to visit, the air would change. I remember the whispered conversations in the hallway. Does he still think we're his parents? And the silence that followed. I must have been about 5 when I realized something didn't add up. I remember the first time I asked, "Why does Chase leave with them and I stay here?" My grandmother stopped what she was doing. She stared at the sink as if the answer were somewhere inside it. Then she turned, dried her hands and said, "Because it's better this way, sweetheart. Just for a while." "Just for a while," echoed in my head for days. I didn't know exactly what it meant, but I knew it hurt. My grandfather tried to make up for it. He'd take me fishing, teach me to use the flashlight in the backyard at night, let me hold the steering wheel on the drive back from the bakery. He'd say, "A real man needs to know when to hit the gas and when to hold the wheel steady." I didn't understand it then, but now I think he meant something else. When my parents showed up, they brought gifts, expensive toys, new clothes, and that uncomfortable smile of people trying to look loving in front of an audience. My mother smelled of strong perfume and spoke quickly, as if she didn't have much time to be there. My father, he just ruffled my hair and said, "You've grown, champ." Champ of what? I never knew. The day they packed the bags to take me back, my grandmother stood by the window. She didn't cry. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding the teddy bear she'd given me and asked, "Can I come back here on the weekend?" She took a while to answer, then said softly, "Whenever you want. But remember, this house will only be here for visits." Visit. That word stayed stuck in my chest for a long time. That night, with every turn of the car, I felt like something inside me was being left behind. I never slept with the same kind of silence again. My parents' house in Lakewood felt bigger than I remembered. My mother had that half-second smile. She said, "Finally home," and was already glancing at the clock before finishing the sentence. My father came up behind me with a light pat on the back. "Welcome back, son," and went back to the couch, where the evening news droned on about traffic and politics. Chase didn't even come out of his room. In the hallway, there were 2 doors. One led to his room, or rather, our room now. The other was an empty guest room with a neatly made bed and a pretty window facing the garden. But Mom said that one was for when someone visits, and that I'd sleep with Chase to strengthen the brotherly bond. At the time, I thought it was fair. It didn't take long to realize it wasn't. Half the room was Chase's territory. Band posters, swimming trophies, a pile of sports magazines in the corner. The other half, mine, was a simple bed pushed against the wall, still with the childish dinosaur sheets my mother had bought without looking. That first night, while I unpacked my things, Chase glanced at my books and muttered, "Dude, seriously? You read this stuff?" "I like hero stories," I said. He laughed. "Heroes are for kids." That was just the beginning. Every small thing I liked became a joke. If I played music, he mocked it. If I read, he mocked that too. Everything was a reminder that I was invading someone more important's space. Mom said, "Brothers fight, it's normal." Small daily doses of disdain. Chase would drink the last juice in the fridge, scatter my clothes on purpose, lock the room when I wanted to study. When I complained, My mother gave me that automatic look of exhaustion. You need to learn to stand up for yourself. No one's going to defend you in life. But when I did stand up, she said I was being dramatic. And Dad just lowered his head and pretended the Cavaliers game was more interesting. I remember a Saturday night. I was trying to memorize a school presentation, and Chase invited 2 friends to play video games. Loud sound, flashing lights, laughter. I asked them to turn it down. He pretended not to hear. Then, without thinking, I yanked the console cord from the socket. Silence. He stood up slowly, that look of surprise and anger mixing on his face. You lost it, huh? And shoved me. Not hard, but enough for my shoulder to hit the shelf and knock over one of his trophies. The noise brought my mother running. She burst in yelling before asking a single thing. What happened here? Chase, with that wounded actor's look, said, He got jealous, Mom. And of course she believed him. That night, I slept facing the wall, pretending to be asleep while hearing her say in the hallway, I don't know what to do with him. He's always causing problems. That's when I understood that coming home wasn't really coming home. It was occupying the leftover space and trying not to make noise. In the school gym, I was sitting in the 3rd row, wearing my grandfather's borrowed suit, sweaty palms gripping the ceremony pamphlet. Academic Excellence Ceremony, Lakewood School District. My name was there, at the top of the honor list. I should have been proud. And I was, until I looked to the back of the room and noticed that the chairs reserved for my parents were still empty. 2 chairs with little paper name tags, Mr. and Mrs. Turner, both empty. My teacher, Mr. Dillard, tried to hide the discomfort. Maybe traffic, huh? He whispered, adjusting my diploma in the stack. I nodded, pretending to believe it. But I knew where they were. Chase had a swim meet that afternoon. Not at the same time, hours later. But somehow, my mother had turned that into a universal excuse. He needs to stay focused, and we need to be there for him. She'd said that 2 days before, and it was like the award had already lost its meaning. When my name echoed through the speakers, Student of the Year Liam Turner, people applauded. But applause sounds different when no familiar hands are clapping for you. The whole gym felt like it was cheering for a ghost. I took the certificate, looked out at a sea of unfamiliar faces, and tried to smile. The photographer snapped a picture, and in that quick flash, I felt something I didn't have a name for back then. Now I do. Accompanied emptiness. The kind of loneliness that only appears when you're surrounded by people. After the ceremony, parents took photos with their kids. Flowers, hugs, laughter, flashes. I stood there holding the diploma like it was fragile, waiting for my phone to ring. It took a while. When it finally rang, it was my dad. Son, Chase had an anxiety attack before the competition. Your mother got nervous. I had to come help. He spoke like he was apologizing for a traffic jam, not for being absent. It's okay, I lied. He replied, I knew you'd understand, and hung up before I could say anything else. I stood there for a few seconds, staring at the dark screen, then walked to the parking lot and sat on the curb. The certificate trembled in my hands. A classmate passed by and asked if my parents had left early. I said, yeah, I think so. It was easier than admitting they'd never shown up. That night, when I got home, I found blue balloons hanging in the living room. Congratulations, Chase, read the banner. Mom was laughing, taking pictures of him with his medal. When they saw me, she said without looking, Hi, honey, how was school? I looked at the diploma in my hand. She didn't even notice. I tucked it away in my room, between the mattress and the wooden frame, and that's where it stayed, for years. When Chase graduated high school, the house turned into a festival. Blue balloons, banners on the porch, loud music. Dad rented a portable grill and spent the whole weekend flipping burgers like it was a national event. Mom couldn't stop repeating to the guests, Our boy's going to Michigan State. Engineering, can you believe it? There were people I'd never seen before. Distant relatives, neighbors, her co-workers. Chase got hugs, gifts, applause. I stayed in the kitchen, refilling cups. No one asked me to help, but it was the only way not to feel invisible. That night, when the noise started to fade, I overheard Mom saying to a friend, Liam's the quiet type. He doesn't like parties. And I stood there in the hallway, holding a trash bag, thinking, it's not that I don't like parties. They're just never for me. A year later, it was my turn to graduate. The acceptance letter came first. Full scholarship to a local university. Academic merit. I showed the envelope to my dad during dinner, and he said, That's great, son, without taking his eyes off the news. Mom just added, Well, at least it's close to home. And that was it. No plans, no celebration. My grandparents, on the other hand, reacted as if I'd won a Nobel Prize. That calls for a party, my grandfather said, slapping the table with enthusiasm. Grandma was already jotting names in her little notebook, planning cake, music, even a small buffet. At first I thought it would be something simple, but word got around. Aunts, cousins, childhood friends, everyone wanted to come. And suddenly, what was supposed to be a modest gathering turned into a big, lively, noisy celebration. When my mother found out, she called furious. This is ridiculous. Your brother didn't get anything this big. Mom, I didn't plan it, I tried to explain. They did. Well, they should have been more considerate. Chase will feel humiliated. Humiliated. By a party that wasn't even his. At my grandparents' kitchen table, I remember Grandpa taking a deep breath before picking up the phone and saying to my mother in a firm tone, "What's humiliating is what you didn't do for him." Silence on the other end. Then he added, "You had the chance to celebrate both. You just chose one." Grandma watched him closely, hands trembling as she held a dish towel, but her eyes were resolute. It was the first time I ever saw them truly lose their patience with my mother. On the day of the party, the tables were covered with colorful cloths, a cake topped with cream frosting, and my framed diploma on the main table. My grandparents had me step up on a small makeshift stage, and my grandfather said in front of everyone, "This boy deserves what his parents' love forgot to give." Everyone applauded. I couldn't smile. I was torn between pride and shame, between wanting my parents to see it and being grateful they hadn't come. Later in the car on the way home, Grandma asked if I was okay. I said I was, but I wasn't. Because for the first time, I realized love could become a battlefield, and that I was the reason for the war. I met Maya at a tech conference in Columbus. I'd gone to help a professor with a panel on automation, and she was presenting an open source project that solved in 20 lines what others spent weeks trying to do. She spoke calmly, but every sentence had the precision of someone who knows exactly what she's worth. She was the first person who looked me in the eyes while talking and actually saw me, not measured, not compared, just saw. We texted for weeks until one day, in the middle of a coffee shop, I asked, "Do you believe in coincidences?" She answered, "No, I believe in people who find courage." And she took my hand. That's how it started. Simple and right, the way good things usually begin. In the months that followed, we started seeing each other on weekends. She lived in a small apartment full of plants and technical books. When I decided to introduce her to my family, Maya hesitated. "You seem tense," she said. "They don't like visitors?" "They do. Some of them," I replied. Mom opened the door with that professional smile she used on neighbors. "So you're Maya," she said, extending her hand, scanning her from head to toe. "Engineer, right?" "Yes, ma'am. I work at a startup in Columbus." "Ah," her tone shifted slightly. "So you must be quite busy." During dinner, the questions came disguised as curiosity. "Do you cook? Do you want kids soon?" Maya answered politely, but without shrinking herself. And that, I saw in my mother's eyes, was the unforgivable sin. On the drive back, Maya looked at me and said, "Your mother doesn't hate me. She fears me." "Why?" "Because I don't bow my head." She laughed, not mockingly, just knowingly. And for the first time, I realized I was with someone who understood the kind of silent fight I'd been waging since childhood. A few days later, my mother texted me. "She seems like a nice girl, but not the kind of woman for a home. You need someone who calms you, not challenges you." I replied simply, "Maybe that's exactly what I need." After that, every visit grew more tense. My mother exaggeratedly praised Chase's girlfriend. A sweet girl, jobless, always smiling and agreeable. "She's such a kind soul," she'd say. "Knows how to take care of a man." And after each sentence, she'd look at me, waiting for a reaction. One night, during Christmas, she finally said out loud what she'd been implying for months. "Your brother's girlfriend is the kind of woman who brings peace to a home. Yours brings argument." Maya just smiled and calmly replied, "Sometimes it's not peace. It's omission." Silence. Dad coughed. Chase changed the subject. I smiled faintly, trying to hide my pride. After that, we stopped going to family dinners. Not because of an open fight, because of exhaustion. Every time I tried to build bridges, my mother came holding matches. But Maya never complained. She only said, "You don't need approval to be happy." It was on a cold, windy afternoon, at the Edgewater Pier on Lake Erie. Maya was leaning against the railing, her hair loose. I'd had the box in my pocket for 2 hours, waiting for the right moment. But the right moment never really exists. Or maybe it only happens when you decide to stop running. So I said, "Maya, look at me for a second. Do you know what it means to me to be able to breathe near you?" She smiled. "That's a strange way to start a speech." I laughed, shaking, and knelt on the cold ground. "Then let me try another one. Will you marry me?" She didn't cry or make a scene. She just crouched, took my hand, and said, "I thought you'd never ask." That night, we had dinner at a small seafood restaurant. We talked about simple things: rent, the dog she wanted to adopt, the possible name of the wedding DJ. Nothing grand. And maybe that's why it was so perfect. The next day, I called my father. "She said yes," I told him, almost laughing. He replied with a muffled, "That's great, son," sounding like he was at work. Then added, "Your mother will need some time to process it." The phrase sounded strange. Process what? But I knew what was coming. 3 hours later, I got the first message from her. "Liam, you didn't want to talk to me before doing something so serious? I could have advised you. Not every woman is what she seems." I ignored it. An hour later, another one. "I hope she's not pushing you into this. Marriage is a rational decision, not an impulse." I took a deep breath, typed and erased 10 different responses before deciding not to answer. Maya noticed the heavy silence and asked what happened. I showed her the screen. She read it slowly, then handed the phone back and said, "And still, you didn't reply. That's strength." In the following days, my mother kept going. Every message was a mix of poisoned blessings and disguised criticism. "I hope she knows how much you love being at home. I just want you to choose someone who fits what our family represents. You'll always be my boy, even if you're confused." And what exactly did our family represents mean anyway, I thought. No one ever explained. My father tried to mediate. "She just wants what's best for you, son." "No, Dad. She wants control over what's best for me." He didn't answer. Maya, on the other hand, started planning slowly. "Nothing extravagant," she said. "Just something that feels like us." She sketched ideas in a notebook, scribbling colors, locations, playlists. When we sent out the invitations, the first RSVP to come back negative was Chase's. No explanation, just won't be able to attend. 2 hours later, my father called. "Your mother decided not to go either." The air got heavy. "Why?" "She said Chase will be celebrating his anniversary that same day. She thinks it's important to be there." For a second, I thought it was a joke, but his voice was sincere, resigned. Maya listened quietly. After I hung up, she said, "You realize your mother always chooses the other son on the dates that matter to you?" I nodded. "And that you're still trying to understand why, as if understanding would change the outcome?" I didn't answer, because she was right. The wedding planning was the most exhausting phase. Maya and I had decided on something small, an outdoor ceremony by the lake, fewer than 100 people. Simple flowers, live music, a quiet dinner. We wanted it to feel like ours, not a showcase. I handled the invitations. Maya took care of colors and food. Each envelope I handwrote felt like a small chance to start over. I sent one to my parents, of course, a gesture of goodwill, still believing that maybe this time it would be different. And it was, but not the way I hoped. A week later, my brother called. His voice was overly friendly. "Man, I don't know if you saw, but I'm planning an anniversary party." "That's great. Congrats to you guys," I said, distracted, going through the guest list. "Yeah, and turns out the only date available at the restaurant she wanted is the same weekend as your wedding." Silence. "The same weekend?" "Actually, the same day." I let out a short, humorless laugh. I thought he'd follow it up with a, "Just kidding." He didn't. "Chase, you're kidding, right? Relax, man. Different crowds. And Mom already said she's coming with me, so it won't be awkward for her to choose." That hit me in the gut. "Choose?" "Yeah, you know. She's always been closer to me and Heather. It'll just be less uncomfortable for everyone." Uncomfortable. That word again. After I hung up, I stared at the calendar. The date looked like it was mocking me. I showed Maya, and she just shook her head. "He did it on purpose." "I know." I tried talking to my mother. I called on a Tuesday afternoon. She answered with that calm, artificial tone. "Hi, dear. You've heard, right? About Chase's party?" "Yeah. And by coincidence, it's on the same day as my wedding." "Yes. An unfortunate coincidence." Coincidence. The same word she used to explain every decision that somehow always ended up hurting me. "Mom, you could come to my wedding. Chase will understand. He'd be hurt. You'll have your father there, right? Don't you think I deserve to have you there too?" She sighed. "Liam, don't dramatize. They're different events. I need to support your brother right now. He's going through a delicate moment. And what about me? You're strong. You always have been." That last sentence broke me a little. That night, Maya found me sitting on the couch, phone still in my hand. She asked what happened. I looked down and said, "My mom's going to Chase's party." She stayed quiet for a moment, then said, "And you're still going to try to convince her to change her mind?" "I think so." "Why?" "Because I'm still the kid who waited for her to show up at the auditorium." Her silence was sweeter than any consolation. She didn't try to fix it, just stayed there. In the following days, it all turned into a kind of family theater. My dad called, trying to be diplomatic. Maybe you could adjust the schedule or split the day. Chase sent neutral texts, as if nothing was personal. My mom, cold as always, wrote, "I don't want any tension. I hope your day is beautiful, but I hope you understand my decision." In the family group chat, someone commented, "It'll be hard to choose which event to go to, huh?" My mother replied with a laughing emoji and a blue heart. That was the last time I ever wrote there. In the end, there was no compromise. She went to Chase's party, and I began to understand that she always chose the same side, the one I wasn't on. The hall in Ohio City was inside an old red brick building. Maya looked calm, she always did, but my stomach was heavy. With every guest who walked in, I glanced instinctively toward the door. Part of me still believed she'd show up at the last minute. A quiet entrance, traffic was terrible, any excuse, but the door stayed still. My father came alone, black suit, slightly crooked tie, the look of someone carrying old guilt. He hugged me slowly, the kind of hug that lasts longer than it should, like he wanted to apologize for everything without saying a word. She couldn't make it, he murmured. I know, I said before he could make something up. We stood in silence for a few seconds. Then he straightened his tie, forced a smile, and said, let's do this right, okay? The ceremony began. Soft music, the murmur of guests, the sound of Maya's footsteps down the aisle. When she appeared, everyone stood. She walked slowly, dressed in simple white, no sparkle, no excess. Her eyes were locked on mine, and for a moment, I forgot who wasn't there. I promised to be patient, loyal, and present. And as I repeated the vows, I realized I had never heard my parents say anything like that to each other. It was strange and beautiful to make those promises knowing I was breaking a cycle. After the ceremony, there was dinner. My father tried to make conversation, crack jokes, take pictures with Maya. He even seemed to enjoy himself a bit, I think. But I could see he was somewhere else the whole time, maybe in the memory of her gaze, of her absence. He left early, saying he needed to check on how she was doing. At the end of the night, Maya and I sat alone on the edge of the dance floor. The band was packing up, the floor covered in confetti. She rested her head on my shoulder and asked softly, do you still think she'll change? No, I said, but I still think she should. The next day, someone tagged me in a post, a photo. My mother laughing, glass in hand, dancing with Chase and his girlfriend at a restaurant glowing with warm lights. The caption read, perfect night, love, family, and celebration. I stared at the screen for minutes. I didn't just feel anger, I felt shame. Shame for believing that deep down she still cared. Shame for counting the minutes before the ceremony like an idiot, waiting for a car that would never pull up. I deleted the app. Maya noticed, took my hand, and said, she's shown what she values. Now it's your turn to choose what you'll value from here on. Somewhere between the anger and the relief came a new kind of silence. Not the silence of being ignored, but the silence of no longer waiting. That's when I truly began to get married, not just to her, but to the idea that love and presence are two different things. The call came 2 days after the wedding. It was my grandfather. I need you to come here, kid. Today, he said, with that voice that left no room for postponing. I went. The house in Parma still smelled like fresh coffee, but the air felt different. My grandmother was in the armchair, hands clasped, face tense. On the dining table lay a thick folder, papers stacked neatly, a gold pen beside it. My grandfather stood by the clock, eyes fixed on it. When I came in, he just said, she'll be here any minute, and she was. My mother walked in without knocking, as if the house still belonged to her. Expensive coat, strong perfume, that same air of superiority she always used to mask insecurity. She glanced at me quickly, without a greeting. What's going on? She asked, directly to my grandfather. He didn't raise his voice. We're taking care of things that have been left unresolved. What things? Family things, real ones. She looked at the table, saw the papers, and realized what was happening. You're changing the will, she said flatly. Yes, he replied. And I wanted you to hear it from me, so you don't make up your own version later. Grandma was breathing deeply. Dad, this is absurd. You're turning Liam against me? He gave a tired half smile. I don't need to turn anyone against you. You did that yourself. She laughed, a short, cynical laugh. All this because I didn't go to the wedding? You're overreacting. No, Grandma said finally, speaking up. Because you've spent your whole life choosing one son and ignoring the other. My mother rolled her eyes, like she was listening to a story she'd heard too many times. I did what I could. Always. What you did, Grandma said, was ration love like it was allowance money. And now it stops. He pulled an envelope from the folder and placed it in front of her. The Parma house, the savings, the insurance, it all goes to Liam. She froze. Her eyes finally lost that controlling shine. You're punishing me like this? It's not punishment, it's correction, he replied. That sentence hung in the air, heavy, impossible to argue with. She crossed her arms. This is emotional blackmail. No, dear, Grandma said. It's emotional justice. For a moment, she looked smaller, not because of the money, but because she realized that the empire she thought she controlled, the narrative, the prestige, the loyalty, was collapsing. She looked at me and tried one last blow. You think it's right to take from me what I built? I answered immediately. I didn't take anything, I just stopped letting you decide what I deserve. She took a deep breath, grabbed her purse, and walked out without looking back. The door slammed hard. Grandpa sat down, exhausted. You know what's funny, Liam, he said. I spent my life believing that a father's love was automatic. Now I see sometimes it needs to be written on paper to count. Grandma stood, wrapped her arms around him from behind, and whispered, Now he has a real family, Frank. We stayed there, the three of us, looking at the papers on the table. None of us spoke for several minutes. It was then I realized, sometimes justice isn't revenge. A month passed after that conversation in Parma. Life had started to take on a new rhythm. Work, home with Maya, weekly calls with my grandparents, until her number appeared on my screen again. It took me a good 10 seconds to answer. Hello? Liam. Her voice came rehearsed, soft. Can we talk? She began with a tone of practiced regret. She said she'd been thinking a lot, that maybe she'd overreacted, that family isn't something you throw away out of pride. She said she'd seen pictures of the wedding and that you two looked beautiful. And then, in the middle of her speech, she dropped it. I want a second chance. We could have a new ceremony, a symbolic one, to start over. For a second, the idea sounded absurd, but she spoke with such carefully crafted sweetness that it almost sounded plausible. Almost. I took a deep breath. Mom, you can't redo a wedding. Sure you can. I could organize it, make it right this time. I wasn't well before. The same excuse as always. I wasn't well. The problem was never what she did. It was always the circumstances that somehow absolved her. You don't have to pretend you want to fix things just because Grandpa changed the will. Silence. Long. Tense. Her voice shifted. So that's it? You think I'm after money? I think you only reach out to people when you realize you don't control them anymore. Then came the poison. You never should have been born, Liam. I was sick when I got pregnant. Your father insisted. I didn't want another child. The words fell hard. No attempt to soften them. I went still. The world seemed to slow down. She kept going, her voice trembling between anger and guilt. I was depressed. When I held you, I felt nothing. Nothing. Just fear and exhaustion. You were a reminder of everything I didn't want to live again. I swallowed hard. Maybe she expected a reaction. Tears, maybe an, I understand. But all I could say was, now I get it. She tried to recover her tone, stammered something about honesty, about not wanting to hurt me. I hung up, blocked her number, then her email, then her social media. One by one, every door she used to slip through with her empty promises closed. When Maya got home from work, she found me sitting on the living room floor, phone in my lap. She didn't ask anything. She knelt in front of me and just looked at me. All I managed to say was, she said she didn't want me to be born. Maya hugged me. No words, no rush. I felt a strange mix. Pain, yes, but also the relief that comes when you realize the worst has already been said and there's nothing left to wait for. I blocked everything, but the world is small. A cousin, a neighbor, someone always sharing something on Facebook. Photos of her with Chase and his wife, dinners, smiles, captions full of quotes about forgiveness and family. In one of them, the caption read, "There's no such thing as a perfect mother, only a present one." I stared for a few seconds, then closed the app. Presence, I thought, means nothing when it's only the body that shows up. Sundays became Parma days. Maya fit into the family like she'd always been there. She helped Grandma with recipes, talked politics with Grandpa. And in that space, I understood something. Family isn't who gives you a name. It's who teaches you never to doubt who you are.